A very good morning and a warm welcome to all. After the master classes, we are now ready with our second plenary session. We had the first plenary session yesterday, and this is equally compelling agenda for the plenary session that we have put together. So the theme for this plenary session is India, a hub for global financial innovation, engineering and managing security of global finance. So this session would be talking about how India is increasingly becoming a preferred destination where large financial organizations are setting up their cybersecurity GCCs, and of course the innovation that is happening in the country from a financial standpoint. So in order to take the discussion forward, let me invite the speakers for this particular session. We have Mr. Ramchandra Kulkarni, Managing Director, Technology Risk for Goldman Sachs. Then we have Mr. Anthony Prakash, CISO for NPCI.
Hi, good morning to everyone.
Then we have Mr. KK Jain, co-founder and CEO for InsurePace.
Hi everyone, good morning.
And now let me welcome the moderator for the session, Mr. Subba Rao Peruppa, Managing Director and India CTO of JP Morgan Chase and Company. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Subba, over to you for the session.
Good morning, everyone.
Mr. Subba, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Aditya.
Yes, so over to you, Mr. Subba, for the session.
All right. So let me start. First of all, thank you, DSI, for organizing this great event. So I'm going to start asking a few questions to these, the esteemed panel. So I'll start with the question one, which is the RBI opened Innovation Hub in order to improve collaboration between various stakeholders of the ecosystems, financial institutions, tech industries, and academia. For such collaboration to succeed, what are the key things that we should focus on? Also, India's robust plan in the digital infrastructure innovations is making headlines. How critical do you think is the role played by cybersecurity and data protection? So, Anthony, can you respond?
Yes. Once again, good morning to everyone. And I'll take the second half of the question first, and then I'll respond to the first half. As a CISO, I'll take cybersecurity and data protection. And this should be an integral part of design and development for any innovation. And any solution today or future has to deal with the cyber threat and the restriction related to the data handling. Example, for any innovation to be a path breaking or a widely accepted, or it not only addresses the current issue in hand, but also have a roadmap for the future threats. See, about a few weeks back, I was reading a book from Peter Thiel's as well, which is 0 to 1. It also talks on the innovation. What he talks in the one sentence is, an innovation can make a vertical progress if it only bets on changing the future state, meaning we should be ready. Hence, it is not enough to have a path breaking, but also equal important to measure the sustainability as well as to sustain growing for the real world scenario. So coming to the second part of that is the first part of the question, for India to grow in a robust innovation center with a key focus area, some of the points I have listed is with respect to skill development and the knowledge sharing. What do we mean by that? The skill development, the need to see the threat as an opportunity to build the capacity and learn the nuances for dealing with the growing vulnerabilities. Example, if I want to tell you, see, the niche skill in the market includes the AI/ML as well, the cloud technology, and the data engineering, where we need to focus more. With respect to the knowledge sharing, we all know the threat intel platform there are so many threat intel providers. We need to collaborate with all the threat intel providers. The reason is some of them picks the threat faster than the other one. Vice versa also is happening. That is one of the collaboration thing which needs to be done. And another thing is to measure the countermeasure the vulnerabilities, which is still awaiting for the patches. So this is the first point for me. The second point, what I was thinking in the focus area is the vision and foresight to anticipate the threats. While the breach and the attack is unavoidable in the digital world, the challenge lies in taking the appropriate step to reduce the breach, is what I could guess. And I could also tell you how proactively we can respond to the threat in a efficient manner is also one of the key point. What I would also focus on this. And the example I'll tell you, the emerging technologies. Example, take it 5G or a deep fakes or cross sector targeting. Example, as I say, so the 5G, if I'm more concerned because the mobile phone user can become a big potential threat actor. And if I take off a deep fakes, you see the morph videos generated by the AI. It looks as if a very real as well. And the cross-sector targeting, which we feel that is happening as well as we speak, because though you might have had a robustic system to have the security standards and everything in place, what are the supply chain to you is more critical. Meaning supply chain, if you build a data center, you have a resiliency built in, but the supply chain can be with respect to power, link, etc. So these are the some of the real foresight to see the anticipated threat is one thing we have seen. The third point which I want to take is there are a lot of tools to identify the behavior patterns and detect the anomalies. That is also one of the important thing, because I was in some forum where I see people don't have the second factor authentication at all still, though we inculcate this in the security from the day one. See, so identity based authentication should be there. There is another thing called NBAD, they will tell, network behavior analysis. So that analyzes the behavior patterns and maps it very clearly in your system and tells us whether any anomaly has been detected. So these are the few things which I could foresee on this. And over to you, Subara.
Excellent, Anthony. Thank you. And KK, you want to add anything here?
Sure. 2 points from my side, from the RBI Open Innovation Hub perspective, right? From what I personally believe as an entrepreneur is that from mere regulation, we need to move towards effective regulation era. And I firmly believe that regulators like Reserve Bank of India, the IRDAI, the SEBI, etc., are moving in that direction, undoubtedly. Right? However, we need to improve that pace and reduce the space between regulator and innovators, alias startups. Because today, also, if you look out, there is a lot of Chinese wall between a regulator and an innovator out there, right? The accessibility to the regulator is very limited, restricted. We need to perhaps come out of that, right? The last piece is that any collaboration between various stakeholders of the ecosystem is only meaningful and successful only if it's built with an intent to co-create and coexist together. Right? Of late, we see that given the Indian social fabric, right, we are open to co-creation, but are we open to coexist? What I mean by that is the large giant institution willing to exist with a nimble and agile startup and grow together or not? If these kind of mindsets and ecosystem can be collaborated together, I feel we have got a better future when it comes to global innovation centered around India.
Excellent. Excellent, KK. Ram, any closing comments on this from you? We can't hear you, Ram. You may be on mute.
Are you able to hear me now? Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, just a couple of points to in my comments on this. One is in terms of when institutions used to look at investment decisions till what 3-4 years back, we were looking at all the usual stuff in terms of how what is the geopolitical status, how stable is the law and order in that particular place, what are the industry incentives, what is the legal framework. I mean, these are some of the things that we were looking from an investments point of view. Now, what is also coming in is what kind of data regime is there in this particular part of the geography, what data protection laws are there. So I mean, these two are now becoming critical component of your investment decision making, and this is a trend which is happening in the last 3 to 5 years. And I think any country, state which wants to seek investment, wants to perform large scale innovation, I think a fairly robust end-to-end data regime is pretty important. The second is something that I just probably to some extent reiterate what Anthony said in terms of what we need to do. Is one of the most critical aspect is high quality cyber education through academic programs. We have, I mean, when I say high quality cyber education, it's like more deep cyber engineering security skill as opposed to generic skills. We have a few good programs in some institutions, but we need much more programs and much more engineers with these skills to be able to position India rightly and innovate at scale. So those are the 2 points that I would talk about: data regime coming into decision making and the need for high quality engineering skills.
Spot on, Ram. I think that I think collective inputs will be definitely useful in in making this innovation center successful. So the second point, right, that I would like to discuss among this group is the security and privacy are the biggest challenges, right, for India to become the global innovation center. So how can we as a technology leaders and technocrats, right, ensure security and privacy become integral part of the financial applications and fintech development? So for this one, right, so I think I also want to share my opinion about this, and then we will hand it over to maybe Anthony. You can add few more details, right? So first of all, before I share my opinion, as standard disclosure, these are nothing connected to the JP Morgan, and all the views that I'm sharing are my personal views with the industry for a little more than 2.5 decades. So the point number one that I think of is developing a fintech application. If you really look at that soup to nuts, right, is like kind of a complicated, time-consuming, and it's an expensive, journey, right? And that too, like if you have a strong a development team with the relevant experience and exposure, I think that will make things easy. But if you have folks who do not have this exposure, it's always a big deal. And a couple of things that we need to be like really considering is for example, you need to go through that entire life cycle. Let's say a lot of people talk about the onboarding and everything, but when a client offboards, what we are going to do with the data, the client's data for different geographies, right? What we're going to do with the identity management, what are the different cybersecurity concerns and different regulatory concerns that like KYC, like the GDPR, and then for Japan it's like APPI, and all these different regional regulatory requirements, right? So at least with the lessons that I learned, I think I would strongly recommend that DevSecOps is one of the best way to move forward. And we should talk about like multiple things, right? So number one, what are our data encryption standards, like how we are encrypting data, whether it is an RSA or like a two-factor authentication or the 3DS, right? What are the different ways that we are adopting both for the data in rest and data in motion? Number one. And number two, like a role-based access. I think we should be like a super clear with the RBAC methodologies, which is how or what sort of accesses that are minimum things that are required for this particular role to be successful, right? And then we also need to have a lot of application logic that's built into this overall process, which is for to execute certain transactions? Are we like really doing the one-time password, like an OTPs, like a sending to the customers, and then mandatory password change after certain times, and then even the duration of the session, like which is like on short duration of the sessions, those kind of things. And on top of it, right, there are very good and recommended practices that most of the institutions follow, which is the bulk data export, right? We should never allow, unless it is really, really required, more than 7 or 8 number of customer details in one screen. We're not allowing end users to do bulk data export from the system, right? The other thing we should also look at it is from the testing standpoint, right? We need to really look at how robust our application, the application that the fintech solution is. Build a professional security testing team, and at every phase of this, the deployment process, make sure that we are doing a lot more penetration tests and all these different type of tests, and then instill the right level of scanning, like both the open source scanning, static scan, and all these different scans. And then we need to refresh the policies on a periodic basis so that we are super compliant with the entire process. So now we can talk about on and on, but I think these are the important ones that, in my view, that we should really apply in building a robust application. So Anthony, anything that you want to add here?
Yes. If I touch upon a few more things, see, with respect to my practical experience as well, the current focus of all financial apps and fintech, I see the more vision goes towards improving the performance improvement. What we have seen is the apps is built, and the less important is given to the security aspect and for that product as well. See, with the growing penetration of internet, it has to be understood that all the attack surfaces is also expanding. A single example, a single vulnerable financial app without an appropriate security check can give a big threat to the payment industry or any banking industry, which I belong. Example, we do most of the AppSec and code review also. We have seen a lot of gaps in that, and we make sure that these gaps are addressed while developing itself in the fintech app. That is the most important thing everybody has to learn before developing an app. And another thing, after developing an app also, we have seen some scenario example. The app is not sharing a PCI data and not in a correct format. Example, you can tell my data is encrypted, everything, but the logging of card data is in the unencrypted format. So there are a lot of mix and match. So it has to be continuous evaluation of the AppSec and source code review, which can give you, and which has to be taken as a bigger thing in any development, and that gives you a better thing to implement in the security and the privacy. And when we develop all these things, the team, I also tell them, you have to think on the different industry geography, which you have earlier touched as well. Example, the current standards vary from geographically. Example, CCPA for America is there, whereas if I develop something for a health industry, HIPAA is there, PCI for the card and payment, so COPA for web service. All this has to be taken into consideration, and we also seen that there are PI, personal information. PI information is also differs from nation to nation. We have something designated. Some country has something more stringent. So these are all has to be taken into consideration. And
no, I think you're absolutely right, Anthony. Right? See, if you look at with the California consumer privacy, right? Just for the state started adding more, and a lot of other states are within the US are like considering these kind of things too. So it's going to be like a little more complex, and we need to be a lot more thoughtful in what is the best way to implement these type of regulations, like through a parameter base, or how do we implement these things so that wherever the customer base is there, so that it's easy for us to scale to the needs of these the different customers in the different geographies. Right?
Correct. Yes.
That's awesome. All right. So I'll move on to the next topic, which is the again, this is very, very interesting piece, right? So the India's innovation story is overall inclusion. right? And be it reaching out to the rural sector, be it government reach to the MSME sector, right? But COVID has impacted the pace of it all, right? How can government push the innovation and its reach towards MSME, right? So this, this is my, in fact, a favorite topic, and I do talk to, a lot of people in the MSME sector, and then see like, how people are looking at it. So before we, get the panel views, right, I would like to share a couple of my thoughts as well. See, if you look at some of the statistics, right? Approximately 6 crore MSMEs are contributing to one third of the India GDP. Right, 6 crore MSMEs are contributing to one third of the GDP, and the vision for the government is to these things will it's going to rapidly increase, and then probably close to half of the GDP should be coming from these MSME sector, right? And also, like interestingly, 11 crore jobs are coming out of this MSME sector, right, which is a big number. And if you are not hit with COVID, the expectation is additional 4 to 5 crore jobs will be adding in the next couple of years. But unfortunately, got hit with the COVID sector. And if you look at the key problems in this space, 80% of them are not registered, right? And we don't know, like, what different sectors that are there underneath that, and the different challenges. And coming to the biggest challenges, right? It's the credit supply, right? Most of these MSMEs are for the credit, right? They're purely dependent on NBFCs and the MFIs. Like, how do we, like, how can we can bring these things under the bank's purview, and then make it a lot more accessible to their credit. And second piece is ease of doing business, right? So how do we offer like collateral free loans, or like, even special liquidity schemes that government can start. And also, I mean, I would definitely, my personal opinion, which is the regulatory cholesterol, that's there in this space. Even to open this MSME side of it, still a lot of services and approvals are required. Number one, and which is either a construction permit, or enforcing some of the contracts, and then the taxes, which is not encouraging the investors to looking at all these things, right? Break even will is like really far in this space. And my favorite piece is the technology advancement. If you look at the MSME industry, by and large, a lot of obsolete technologies are in play, and most of them are not leveraging the newer technologies, which is pretty easy to spin off, and very less cost, but again, not much of a knowledge in this. So government already like started a lot of effort in this space, and then they are spinning off a lot of technology centers to educate and then to train. But I think the effort should be like 10, or like a 10x or 20x type of that effort that's currently going on. So I would like to hear, Ram or Anthony, like your views on what, what else, like, we can do to revive, this sector, which got hit with COVID.
Okay. Couple of points from my side, as I was thinking when we were talking as well. See, there are many new startups are coming up in India. It is important that to provide them the incubation environment to grow. See, and we have seen because of COVID-19, a lot of MSMEs are struggling because of the impairment of supply chains as well. Because the supply chain is cut, then it is becoming a real problem. As a result, the whole ecosystem shown a decline in the production and the growth. So the MSME thus requires support from the industry as well as the government. See, as everyone agree, there is a huge potential for fintech that is remain untapped for the rural industry. They can focus on many MSMEs. In order to have that MSME, government should also open to the idea forum and reward people who come up with some innovative and the cost-effective solution to address the public issue. And another thing I was thinking was on the big bounty program, which we do for fixing the known and unknown issue, it can be also considered. That is a few points which came into my thought as well.
Excellent. I think, yeah, these are great, right? So the fourth question, right, KK, it's to you, which is how to balance the trade-offs among the three factors, right? Which is the rapid changes brought about the tech or innovation and compliance and regulations, like a old, new, or like a things are coming, and finally the large existing base of legacy systems processes that span the spectrum from low end to high end, and the inclusion is necessary. So what are your recommendations and then the trade-offs between these three?
Awesome. See, personally, if you look out, and everyone would agree with this, that change is inevitable, and the pandemic has only imposed, if not preponed, that change on everyone's life. Right. With that in place, the only way, with my limited experience, what I foresee is that whatever the 3 points you have mentioned about, balancing those 3 points for any business, irrespective of the size and sector we represent, is going to be a basic hygiene any business model should incorporate. And for that to happen, the 3 things which I always believe that should be a integral part of your organizational culture, is that you should be agile, you should always be grounded, that is connected with your customers, and you should be responsible towards the law of land. Right? If you can follow these 3 basics, be agile, be grounded, and be responsible, right? You need not do trade-offs. You will always be looking forward to balance between these 3 points, which is rapid changes brought about by technology or innovations, compliances, and rest all. Further, if you look out, what I also believe that corporates, regulators, and academia should create an internal environment that encourages people to fail, right? Today, whether we like or dislike, the appraisals are basically a tool measurement basis the targets we have achieved, right? How can we inculcate a culture wherein we basically incentivize people to take the challenges, risk, and perhaps fail, right? And that's perhaps a right way one can do a balancing trade-offs between the 3 factors which we were discussing about, right? Third point would be that can be as large institutions bring fresh brains or fresh legs inside the boardrooms, so that we can challenge the legacy systems and try to coexist along with the gray hairs and the black hairs together, right? That's what is very fundamentally important. Last piece, which is very, very close to my heart, and because I've been into financial services all through my life, earlier dealing with RBI and today dealing with IRDA with my latest endeavor, insurepace.com. I always believe compliances are good, but regulation should follow innovation, and it should not be the other way around. Ironically, in this great country, I'm leaving apart RBI, which has been very, very proactive as of today, right? But other regulators still are going very slow. They want innovation to follow regulation. If that happens, then it's no more an innovation, right? So if these are the 4 fundamentals, just to sum it up: be agile, be grounded, and be responsible. If you can do these 3 things, balancing becomes a way of life.
Yeah, and also if I can add the 4th one, KK, customer focus, right? I think, let's say you're targeting some of these, core or segment of customers, right? And then probably what is the need for that customers at that moment too, right? I think if you can add that one, I think that's going to, hit the ball out of the park.
I agree. I completely align with that.
Right. All right. So the 5th one, Ram, this is to you. How do you build an architecture that is future-proof while also being stable and resilient and compliant?
Well, future-proof is a pretty interesting statement because it's hard. But definitely there are certain practices that we could do, we could adopt in terms of making sure any new things which are coming in, you are able to incorporate. And a lot of this is, fundamental tech architecture approaches serves very well here as well. And I can talk about 1 or 2 of those things, and there are many. Just building a system where there is no, I would say, go ahead and say no visibility to the end users in terms of underlying technologies to the end users by having like robust interfaces and guidelines and implementation hygiene. So probably what example I would take is something that we in Goldman Sachs built when we looked at our data lake. How do we look at building the lake? What are the contracts that we would want? What what are the technologies we use? And one of the things we built was on Scala. I mean, probably I'll not take the names, but one of the things we built was on using a particular interfacing and programming. And as we went along, spent 12, 18, 24 months, we realized that it's probably not scalable. So how did we? I mean, we had to move to another platform, and moving of that became so much easy because we didn't have to go to user groups, we didn't have to go to the customers of the lake or the custodians of data. We were able to do all the things in terms of our changes in the backend without any interfacing with users. That is because our underlying technologies were never exposed anyway to the users. I think that's a pretty important aspect of designing or architecting your technology approach. Second is a more, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward one. I mean, you build a modular approach. Obviously, when you are looking at any architecture, you should be able to build a modular approach so that taking out something or putting in something becomes much easier. And if you're looking at, let's say, a cloud scenario, the design of how do you look at control plane, how do you look at data plane, what information is exposed from each of the planes, and how do you ensure that the design and implementation team is segregated from the data plane access. These are like some of elements in terms of architecture when you are looking at in the cloud from a pure best practices point of view. I mean, just coming from a cyber security point of view, if I want to build an architecture today, what are the 4 or 5? I mean, these are in no order, or these are in no way complete. But I would say some of the things that I would consider is my architecture should be able to integrate SOAR platform, which is one of the key upcoming things in cybersecurity, where I should be able to do security orchestration. I should be able to automate my runbooks. I should be able to automate lots of my forensics part in terms of investigation and use institutional data sources. So how do you do that is obviously through the SOAR platform. But when you build architecture, if you create something which will allow to integrate easily, that would make life easier. And we spoke about DevSecOps earlier a few minutes back, and in fact, most of the studies predict that there will be a significant leaning towards DevSecOps in the coming days, months, years, in terms of how dev teams are looking at that. So you should definitely look at an architecture which allows and encourages fast incorporation of DevSecOps model. The other thing is incorporation of zero trust. A lot of organizations are thinking. Some are in probably the first 10, 15, 20% stages. So this is something which is going to happen in the next 2 to 4 years. So I would definitely consider this if I'm doing architecture. And the last couple of things I would also say is integrate with some really good open source platforms. I mean, when you are looking at how do I do detection from a threat management point of view, you want to do the fastest way you can do detection. I mean, the current most of the systems are batch-based detection versus a stream-based detection, where you use platforms like KSQL to allow you to early detect and early respond to particular threats. And then the last one is in terms of when you do cybersecurity, one of the perils is how do you store logs and how do you manage data. And there are ways and means to achieve this efficiently. One of the ways is through an elastic cloud storage, which will allow you to retrieve logs very, very efficiently compared to traditional method where you have manual tools pulling logs for you. So your architecture, if it can incorporate ability to implement elastic cloud storage, that would be a pretty big component of your cybersecurity investigations. So this is what I would say in terms of basic principles of how do you design and architect at this moment, and what are like say top 5 things that I would consider from a cybersecurity point of view as we speak. Obviously, this is a bit of a moving target.
Yeah. So I think like we only have like a little more than 8 minutes. So I'll jump on to the next question. Ram, if you can stay with me. India is increasingly becoming the preferred destination for financial majors setting up cybersecurity GCCs and centers in India, right? How do you see this trend shaping up going forward? We can't hear you.
Sorry. You're right. I mean, there are many financial services organizations which have either built or in the process of building, well, I would say in some cases, reasonably large cybersecurity practice here in India. In fact, I mean, obviously not now, but pre-COVID, there were at least a couple of visitors for me. I'm sure, Subha, you would also be having those visitors from various parts of the world coming to India to just to learn how organizations have set up. Obviously, not just cybersecurity practice, but generally the back office functions, as we call, or GCCs, innovation centers. I mean, there are a number of names for that. And then some of the aspects that they always used to talk in terms of our discussion is how do we look at data handling in India? If I share data to another country, will it be safe? What are the steps we are taking? How are we looking at concentration risk? How do we manage to own critical global programs? These were some of the conversations, and these continue to be the conversations that are being held. And in terms of what do I see as a trend, I see the current curve still going up in the short term in terms of gradual build-up of cybersecurity centers, and in the medium to long term, depending on what what our country does in terms of various factors that we discussed in the last 20, 30, 40 minutes, I think it has the potential to significantly accelerate. That is what I would think is a particular trend that is happening. Some of the key drivers that we are looking, I mean, organizations are looking, is obviously getting dispersed capability in execution. That means if I have multiple locations, especially in cybersecurity, where we are seeing increased zero-day issues, we are seeing increased demand in terms of faster responses. If you have dispersed capability across the globe, that would serve the purpose pretty well. And in terms of even the threat landscape as it is evolving, we need more and more diversity in handling the cyber threats, and we need people who are skilled in various areas, and they see India as an ideal destination for that. Just as I wouldn't say a disadvantage, but something that we need to look at, and something which is already changing. One is the deep engineering skill set. I think we are pretty good in running security operations center. We are pretty good in pen testing, application code reviews. But in terms of deep engineering skills, it is there, but it needs to be much more. So that is one thing that we need to focus on. Second is in terms of senior leadership. Again, there is a difference between I report to somebody in New York or in London or Hong Kong or else, versus I run this program for the firm, and that is where the leadership comes, and what is the seat on the table that you have. I think that is fairly limited at this moment. Definitely changing reasonably rapidly. So, I mean, if we were to have this conversation in 12, 18 months' time, I think we will have a different picture. But at this time, in terms of just leadership and presence in the global management chain, the current position is reasonably limited. So these are the two things that we would want to work. But, I mean, the trend is pretty positive.
Let me give you a couple of stats. This industry, right, in 2019, it's around a little more than $2 million, $2 billion, right? So there is a great report by Rama Vedashri, madam, like she's the the CEO of the DSCI at the India level, and then Siddharth Vishwanathan from PwC. I strongly encourage people to look at that report, and this report has got like a multiple sections, which is available on the internet. And this talks about the growth of especially this particular space, right? It's by 22, like from 2 billion in 2019, this is going to be 3 billion in in 2022, by 2022. So which is a big thing actually, right? And if you look at the CAGR, it's the 15% of growth. And if you look at the rest of the world, which is only at 10%, so we are like growing at 1.5 times than the rest of the world. So the opportunities are like tremendous. And if you look at the segments, which segments are like really contributing, especially in the service sector, of course, like the BFSI is number one, and then IT and ITES are contributing to more than 1/3 of the demand, right? These three, and predominantly BFSI is especially with the regulations, but IT and ITES are a lot of work that's coming because of we spoke a little bit about the KYC, and then CCPA, and then GDPR, and then all these the Japanese regulation. Every country has got a lot of regulations, and then how we are going to comply. And if you look at IT and ITES services, like we are serving more than 90 plus different countries, and then you are like obligated to know and then support all these the data that you are doing it. So overall, right, I think this is a growing industry, and I personally witnessed when we go for a lot of campus hires, like students are a lot more enthusiastic in learning the cyber technologies. They want to there are people who want to build their careers into the cyber and then the privacy, and it's that predominant right now, and we can start seeing these things in the in the ecosystem, right? So I know we have like 2 more minutes. I want to make sure that we cover everything, and any questions from the people who are attending, feel free to put in that questions, and we'll be happy to take any questions from the audience. While we are getting these questions, any final comments, KK, Anthony, and Ram, and Aditya?
Simply, I can tell you one thing.
We can't hear you. Go ahead.
Can I? Hello?
Go ahead, Anthony.
Okay. See, only one thing on the same point is what makes India as an outlier in the field of fintech and payment innovation is that rapid adoption of tech by masses. See, example, I can take our own product at UPA, where we have seen the methodic rise as well. See, and according to the current trend, which I was reading about some time back also, we are currently head of European Union and America in terms of interoperability, as well as the future set availability related to the financial product. However, there is still a long way to go with respect to the Asian countries like China and South Korea. Okay, that is what I want to tell you.
Great.
That.
Aditya, there's a question from the audience, right?
Correct, sir. So the question goes like this. This is open to the whole panel. So it says how India is expected to fare when it comes to the financial innovation in short to medium term. That is part 1 of the question. Part 2 says how strong are its credentials when it is about managing the security of global finance.
KK, Anthony.
See, some of the important things with respect to the security standards is, see, whenever we develop something, we need to have that PIM solution implemented. And apart from this, from a security standards, everything has to go through your vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, which gives the more mobility and more flexibility in terms of addressing the issue later as well. And day zero is one of the important buzzword in the last 1 year because of people working from home. We need to have the periphery fully secured, and there are a lot of things with respect to periphery also. See, example, how do you can, from a security angle, how do you instigate the phishing attack to the self-employees also? The awareness comes into picture, how we are and how the employees also, because most of them, the attacks happen internally as well. People are unaware. How do you educate them? These are some of the things we need to see and see that. And another important thing is user behavior analysis. Some of the good tools are there, which you can also see the trend. I will definitely see most of the things coming from external is also related to our internal flaw. So when we have that internal thing secured, that gap is secured, then we can avoid the external threat. That is the point what I want to make.
Yeah, you're spot on, Anthony, and just want to add, right? Yes, the buy-in is there from the rest of the world, and then the talent is like growing. And then if you look at the number of applications and the number of solutions that are coming from this region, and I'm like really proud. Do we have an opportunity? Yes, we do have an opportunity in strengthening, especially integrating with the existing systems, right? When your solution is there, how your solution is going to coexist or replace the existing or the legacy platform, that will provide a faster, better, cheaper to the customers that are using it, right? I think that's the key, right? As long as you are able to show the value for the ecosystem of the customer, yes. When I see a great future, and then the innovative minds and then the thought leadership that's coming from the ground, is definitely in the right direction.
Perfect. So that, I think, perfectly answers the question. So thank you so much. I think that's all time we had for this panel discussion. Thank you so much, Mr. Subba, for the excellent moderation. Thank you so much, Mr. Ramchandran, Mr. KK, and Mr. Anthony for joining in and sharing your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.